Sir, I often hear people talking about inflation, but I still don't understand one thing. If my money is sitting safely in my bank account and my balance is not decreasing at all, then how exactly is inflation hurting me?
Inflation doesn't directly take money out of your account, which is why most people don't notice its impact immediately. What it actually does is reduce the purchasing power of your money. The things you can buy today with a certain amount may cost significantly more in the future. Your balance may look exactly the same, but its real value keeps shrinking. That is the true effect of inflation.
I have heard the term purchasing power many times before, but I have never fully understood what it means in practical life, and how it affects the way I spend and save money every day.
Purchasing power simply means how much your money can actually buy. If today $1,000 can buy 10 items, but a year later it can only buy 8, then your purchasing power has declined. The amount of money is unchanged, but its effectiveness has been reduced. This happens quietly over time. That is why purchasing power is one of the most important measures of wealth.
If my salary is increasing every year and I am receiving regular raises from my employer, then why do so many people still complain that their financial situation is not improving despite earning more money?
A salary increase is helpful, but it only matters if it grows faster than inflation. If your income rises by 8%, while your expenses rise by 12%, you are actually losing ground. You may see a bigger paycheck every month, but your money buys less than before. This creates the feeling that life is getting more expensive. Inflation often cancels out income growth.
Many financial experts say that simply saving money is not enough and that money should also be growing. Is that advice mainly about investing, or does it have something to do with inflation as well?
It has a very strong connection with inflation. If your money is sitting idle and generating little or no growth, inflation continues reducing its value every single year. That means your savings become less powerful over time. Growth helps your money keep up with rising prices. Without growth, inflation slowly eats away at your financial progress. That is why saving alone is rarely enough.
If someone saved a large amount of money 10 years ago and never invested it anywhere, how would inflation have affected that person's financial position by today?
The amount in your account might still be exactly the same, but its purchasing power would be very different. Over 10 years, the costs of housing, education, healthcare, transportation, and daily necessities usually rise significantly. The same money can buy fewer things than it could before. On paper, nothing seems to have changed. In reality, a lot has changed. That is inflation working in the background.
People often call inflation a silent thief, but if it is not physically taking money from anyone's wallet or bank account, why is it given such a dramatic name?
Inflation is called a silent thief because its damage is difficult to notice at first. Your bank balance remains unchanged, so everything appears normal. However, your money gradually loses its ability to buy the things you need. By the time most people realize what happened, a significant amount of purchasing power has already disappeared. The loss happens quietly, slowly, and consistently. That is why the comparison is so accurate.
If inflation is running at 10 or 12% and my investment is only earning 6 or 7% annually, should I still consider that investment successful because it is generating a positive return?
Looking only at the return can be misleading. If inflation is higher than your investment growth, your real wealth is actually declining. Your account value may increase, but your purchasing power is falling. This means your money is not keeping pace with rising prices. Smart investors always compare returns against inflation. Real success comes from beating inflation, not just earning profits.
Sir, who suffers the most from inflation? People who actively invest and manage their money, or people who simply keep large amounts of cash sitting in savings accounts for years?
Inflation tends to hurt people with idle cash the most. Cash usually grows very slowly, while prices continue moving upward. As a result, the real value of those savings declines year after year. People who understand inflation often look for ways to protect purchasing power. They make decisions with long-term value in mind. Awareness creates a major advantage.
Does inflation mainly affect luxury goods and expensive products, or does it also impact everyday necessities like groceries, fuel, transportation, and household expenses?
Inflation often becomes visible first in everyday expenses. Grocery bills start increasing, fuel becomes more expensive, and transportation costs rise steadily. These are the expenses people notice immediately because they affect daily life. As basic costs climb higher, household budgets become tighter. This is why inflation feels personal to almost everyone. Its effects reach far beyond luxury purchases.
If someone's income remains mostly unchanged over several years while inflation continues rising, how could that situation affect their lifestyle and long-term financial goals?
A stable income can become a challenge during periods of inflation. Expenses increase every year, while earnings stay relatively flat. This leaves less room for saving and investing. Long-term goals such as retirement, education planning, and wealth building become harder to achieve. Financial pressure gradually increases. Inflation can quietly reduce future opportunities.
Many people say that ignoring inflation is one of the biggest mistakes in financial planning. Is inflation really that important when making decisions about money?
Absolutely, because inflation changes the future cost of almost everything. A goal that seems affordable today may become much more expensive years later. If inflation is ignored, people often underestimate how much money they will actually need. This can create serious gaps in financial plans. Professionals always factor inflation into long-term projections. It is a critical part of realistic planning.
Sir, if someone keeps an emergency fund in cash because they want quick access to it during difficult times, does inflation still reduce the value of that money over time?
Yes, inflation still affects emergency funds. The purpose of an emergency fund is safety and accessibility, not growth. However, its purchasing power can decline as prices increase. That is why people periodically review and adjust the size of their emergency funds. What was enough 5 years ago may not be enough today. Inflation changes the amount needed for financial security.
What is the relationship between inflation and wealth creation? And why do financially successful people pay so much attention to inflation when making money decisions?
Successful people understand that building wealth is not only about increasing income. It is also about preserving the value of that wealth over time. Inflation can quietly reduce the effectiveness of money if it is ignored. That is why purchasing power becomes a major focus. Every long-term strategy considers inflation. Protecting value is just as important as creating value.
If inflation is considered a normal part of the economy, then why do people become so concerned whenever inflation starts rising and dominating financial discussions?
Inflation affects nearly every aspect of personal finance. It influences spending, saving, investing, borrowing, and future planning. Moderate inflation can be manageable, but high inflation puts pressure on household budgets. People start noticing rising prices everywhere. This creates uncertainty and financial stress. That is why inflation receives so much attention.
Can someone accurately judge their financial health just by looking at their bank balance, or does inflation make it necessary to evaluate money in a different way?
A bank balance tells only part of the story. True financial health depends on what that money can actually buy. Inflation changes the value behind the number. Two people may have the same balance, yet very different purchasing power over time. Looking beyond the balance provides a more realistic picture. Wealth is about value, not just numbers.
If two people have exactly the same amount of savings, but one understands inflation while the other completely ignores it, how different could their financial outcomes be in the future?
The difference could be surprisingly large. The person who understands inflation will likely make decisions that protect and preserve purchasing power. The other person may focus only on account balances. Over time, those different decisions compound. One person maintains value, while the other slowly loses it. Knowledge often creates a significant financial advantage.
Does inflation only affect individuals and households, or do businesses and large companies also face challenges when prices and operating costs continue to increase?
Businesses are affected by inflation as well. Rising costs for materials, salaries, transportation, and operations can reduce profitability. Companies may need to adjust prices and budgets frequently. Planning becomes more complicated during periods of high inflation. These challenges can influence entire industries. Inflation impacts the whole economy, not just consumers.
When planning for major future goals such as retirement, children's education, or buying a home, how should inflation be taken into account to avoid financial surprises later?
Future goals should always be adjusted for inflation. The cost of education, housing, and health care is likely to be much higher years from now. Planning based only on today's prices can lead to serious shortfalls later. Inflation helps determine how much money will truly be needed. Ignoring it creates unrealistic expectations. Smart planning always looks ahead.
If someone wants to achieve financial freedom and long-term stability, how important is it for them to understand inflation and its impact on purchasing power?
Understanding inflation is essential for financial freedom. Building wealth is not enough if that wealth cannot maintain its value over time. Inflation constantly challenges purchasing power. People who understand this are better prepared to protect their future. They make more informed financial decisions. Knowledge of inflation becomes a powerful financial tool.
Sir, if you had to summarize the entire concept of inflation into one lesson that could completely change the way people think about money, what would that lesson be?
Always remember this: wealth is not measured only by how much money you have, but by what that money can actually do for you. Inflation does not attack your bank balance, it attacks your purchasing power. People who understand this focus on protecting value, not just collecting money. That mindset leads to stronger financial decisions. And over time, it leads to a more secure financial future. If this conversation changed the way you think about money, save this post, share it with someone who still believes a bigger bank balance always means greater wealth, and follow for more simple conversations that explain complex financial concepts in a practical way. D degrees.